What is going on, everybody? This is Slick from Breaking the Clutch, back again with another video. This is the second half to the complete, gigantic, massive, humongous patch balance update that is coming to the meta of Halo Wars 2. The first one was uploaded yesterday. Make sure you go check that out. If not, I'll put a link in the description below, as well as a link to the actual Halo Waypoint article if you want to check it out. The reason I split these videos in two is because there are so many changes that I cannot do a complete analysis in 1 hour long video. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that with you guys. So I've moved on, and the second half is going to be based on the leaders and bigger game bug fixes. So we'll jump right into that and see what's going on with the leaders. Okay, so kicking this first change up, we're going to start off with Forge and the Forge Hog. Of course, this hits a nice chord for a lot of people in the game. A lot of people hate Forge Hog, and they're really excited to see him potentially get nerfed. So let's see what they decided to do. Looks like they're going to reduce the Forge Hog shields by 29%, which is really, really good. The shields were definitely too difficult to drop for that early in the game and also throughout the game. So seeing those reduced by nearly 30 is awesome. That's good to see. Anvil round recharge reverted to 45 seconds. It was, it actually was reduced in time and then brought back up to 45 seconds. It seems what they want to do. That's a great time frame. 45 seconds is definitely an okay time frame. Anvil round damage reduced by 16%. Excellent. That's what we want to see. Forge Hog cost increased from 300-275 to 350-275. That little tiny amount is actually a huge difference. Say that's what is that? It's half a supply pad. You know, that's what is that? 1/4 of a generator if it's your first one. So in your main base build, that's actually a significant amount of 50 power, or I'm sorry, 50 supply. Basic weapon DPS reduced by 8%. Okay, these are the good changes. These are changes I wanted to see alongside Forge, because Forge's Anvil round was incredibly intimidating, incredibly powerful when he was the meta. However, on the flip side, himself, he was also very, very strong. So it's good to see that his shields are reduced. So their effectiveness is going to be much weaker. Anvil round recharge, 45 seconds. Damage reduced 16% for Anvil round, and then 8% on basic, the Gauss Hog DPS. That is awesome. That's a great change right there. Let's see. And then we're also moving on to accelerated assembly. Cost reduction per level is 15 to 10%. Training speed buff reduced from 10% at level 1, 70% at level 2, to 5% per level. So that's pretty exciting. You're just going to see, say, those vehicles that they can produce. Say it's still really effective, but they're trying to make it a little more balanced overall, which is great, because accelerated assembly, if you guys remember the Jackrabbit days, it was definitely way too strong. Moving on to leader Isabelle. Looks like leader power radial has been rearranged, which is great. These are some of the things that I was asking for in a couple videos a while back. Accelerated assembly has been moved to tier 2, I'm assuming to match Forge in a sense. Lotus Mines to tier 3. I want to read the comments on this. Accelerated assembly at tier 2 in her leader radial is a large buff to Isabelle, giving her much more early game presence with vehicles, chaining it into a strong mid game. Isabelle has damn good leader powers after say that 6 o'clock leader power. They start moving on, they just get better in my opinion. So giving her that strong beginning makes a lot of sense. Looks like she's also getting the exact same accelerated assembly changes that Forge is getting. Makes sense. Cost reduction per level, 15 to 10. Training speed buff, and blah, blah, blah. Moving on, we also have leader power Mac Blast is getting tweaked a little bit. Looks like they are reducing the overall cost from level 1, 2, and 3 for the Mac Blast, making it a little bit cheaper and easier to use. At all levels, damage area of effects made larger and more generous. So that means that the Mac is now much more powerful for Isabelle, which is great. Like I said, the 6 o'clock power for Isabelle being the Mac, that's what I like to see. I want to see that be something incredibly strong where it can just turn a battle in that little bit of time frame where Isabelle is left behind. That's great. As long as it's not too strong, I should say. It's great. Now moving on, we also have Ghost in the Machine tweaks. Now has a telegraph of 1.5 seconds. Uses the correct telegraph visuals, duration 13 to 20. So they increased Ghost in the Machine by nearly, what is that? That's another, what is that? That's another like 40% increase right there for Ghost in the Machine, 7 seconds. Blitz duration, you know, who cares, 45, 30 seconds, and then cost 1400, 750 to 850, 850, which is, so they upped it by 100 power, then reduced it by a very large amount in supply. So 850 is going to make Ghost in the Machine much more usable, and that's going to be incredible to see. Moving on to Professor Anders. Looks like they're trying to tweak her and make her a little more viable as well. Looks like Protector Sentinel cost has gone from 280.30 down to 250.30. So that 30 supply is going to be very helpful for, say, building more generators and getting various upgrades for the Sentinels. You'll have much more power sitting around if you have more supply sitting around as well. That's great to see. I want to see something better, though. I want to see Sentinels get a little bit of a damage buff. If not a damage buff, I want to see Sentinels get something else that will give them a little bit of an edge. Looks like they are also going to be tweaking Sentinel Beacon and change the lifespan from 3.5 up to 5 seconds. All you C-Mitch and Udpoo fans, that means that your Sentinels will be viable again, or at least, sorry, your Kodiaks will with Anders, so make sure that you are prepared to be dealing with that. When you're playing in Anders, you're going to be dealing with a lot of siege spam. Lots of Sentinels coming out of those. An extra 1.5 seconds on top of that is going to make them definitely a force to be reckoned with. Moving on to Leader Johnson, Sergeant Johnson. Leader Radial has been rearranged. It looks like Digging in Tier 2 has been moved to Tier 1, Pelican Transport Tier 3 has been moved to Tier 2, and then Remote Sensors Tier 1 to Tier 3. These are all great things. Digging in definitely needs to be Tier 1 for sure. That's going to help out a lot with, say, those guys who are trying to set up for a good defensive early game. Pelican Transport from 3 to 2 makes more sense because that's when you're going to have the infantry army you need to move across the map. That's also going to help a lot for Johnson getting an early attack on with those infantry units. So that means if you go for a Johnson Marine play, especially since Marines are getting a little bit of a buff, if you didn't watch last video, that means that you'll be able to Pelican Transport very early in the game, which is awesome. And remote sensors move from Tier 1 to Tier 3. That also makes sense. You really don't need remote sensors until about that 3rd tier point in the game. They're great for map vision and a couple other things, but in general, I think remote sensors should have been Tier 3 from the start. So these are great rearranges. His EMP Mac Blast damage has been reduced 4,000, 5,000 to 3,750 to 4,750. I'm assuming that second number has to do with air because EMP Mac Blast does a shit ton of damage to air. Cooldown has been changed from 175 up to 190, so an additional what is that, 15? Additional 15 seconds on top of the EMP Mac Blast and a little bit less damaging, which is great. The Mac Blast for Johnson, the EMP Mac Blast was definitely too strong in its current state. Great to see that change. Very excited to see that change. Moving on to the Mantis. Looks like they're trying to fit the Mantis more in the Warthog meta. Looks like they're reducing the cost by 50 supply. Heal value has been reduced by 40 because you know, they're trying to make it heal a little bit less fast, if that makes sense. DPS and HP increased by 10%. Awesome. Once again, fitting that Warthog. Build time decreased by 3 seconds. Speed decreased by 2 seconds. And then also looks like acceleration reduced by 16. I don't think you should mess with the speed and acceleration. I think the Mantis was good as it was speed-wise. But you know, all in all, at the same time, I'd have to see it in play because if they're increasing the HP and the DPS, then that means that it'll probably be a little bit more viable. So that's great. Looks like they're also tweaking the bunker. They're making the heal value up to 3 from 1, making it, you know, it takes longer to heal, especially with Johnson and his healing viability. Cooldown 90 seconds to 110 seconds. And that's not bad. And definitely, you can spam bunkers so easily. Level 1 HP decreased by, what is that? Was that 13? Yep, 1300. So that's okay as well. I think the bunkers definitely are too strong. So having a little tiny bit of chunk of reduction, that's not bad. Refund supply, 125 down to 100. That's basically nothing. A lot of people don't know that when you sell the bunker, you do actually get supplies back, and now you only get 100, so not too bad. Moving on to the Johnson Hero, level 1 beacon heal rate increased by 24%, level 2 increased by 16, beacon HP reduced by 60, DPS reduced 1010, and able to place beacons more consistently. These are all great things. These are the things that say beacon would most certainly give Johnson some little bit unfair advantages early game, especially with all these other tweaks they're making. So I'm glad to see them kind of mess with that a little bit more. Moving on to Colossi changes. Looks like Stomp upgrade cost has been 500 to 900. Don't agree with that at all. Stomp damage versus heavy reduced by 29%. Also don't agree with that at all. Two things I've never seen in a competitive game. 1, a Colossi. 2, Colossi Stomp. I don't know why they're making it more expensive, especially because it needs to have that upgrade, essentially, to be viable. And then also at the same time, Stomp damage versus heavy reduced by 29%. You know, they're trying to make it so those Cyclops and those Hunters definitely do not get messed up by these Colossi. But once again, that Stomp really needs to be effective and strong because you just don't see Colossi. You just don't. Moving on to Leader Cutter. Looks like Leader Power Radial has been rearranged Lotus Mine to Tier 2, Battle Hardened to Tier 1. So they're trying to make it so that you have a lot of infantry advantages early on, especially I think Battle Hardened deals with, say, your veterancy. So you can get veterancy faster now, which is okay, especially with starting Marines getting a nice buff. ODSTs, grenade damage much more consistent. SMG DPS reduced by, or I'm sorry, whoa, hang on. SMG DPS increased by 43%. Range increased by 40%. Jesus Christ, man. Gets additional bonus range against air units. HP per squad member increased by 46%. That is awesome. Demolition charge damage versus buildings reduced by 25%. ODSTs are back. That's awesome. ODSTs having these changes are going to be ridiculous. Really strong, because they're really strong as they are, in my opinion, especially when you get them. So seeing that they're going to have, say, this is crazy. They get bonus range against air units, 40% range increase. That's nearly doubled. That's crazy. And then same thing, SMG DPS has been upgraded by 43%. ODSTs are going to be crazy. Cutter's bombing run projectile delay from 1.35 to 1, so that means that your bombs will come out sooner. That is good. It definitely needs to be that way. Moving on to Leader Sarina, Cryo Troopers. Looks like that's the only thing we're going to see change-wise, just Cryo Troopers. Looks like their speed has been increased by 8%, build time reduced by 2 seconds, base HP increased by 10%, Cryo Trooper weapon chill to vehicles reduced by 50%, Aura chill to infantry 50, Aura chill to vehicles 68. So what they're trying to do is make Cryo Troopers less annoying. Absolutely agree with these changes. I think Aura Chill is too strong, especially against vehicles. If I'm in a Warthog and I'm driving past like a really cold dude, I should not like freeze in my tracks, in my opinion. So, you know, that makes just kind of logical sense. That's great. And it looks like the speed, build time, and HP are met with the Hellbringer changes that I mentioned in the last video in the first half of this patch. So they're just trying to make Crowd Troopers and Hellbringers a little bit more viable. Moving on to Leader Kinsano. Looks like they're going to tweak a little bit with her Cyclops. Flame Wall cooldown has been halved. Looks like DPS at Tier 1 increased 45%. Duration has been gone down to 10. Tier 3 is 42% increase for duration, and then also gone down to 10 seconds, which is not bad. You know, they're trying to make it so the damage is crazy high and it happens for not as long. The animation definitely lasts forever right now, so I'm happy to see that changed. Flame Wall has slightly increased damage multiplier against buildings. It should, because, you know, fire and stuff. Kinsano HP increased by 13%, SP increased by 13%. These are great. That's what I want to see right there. I definitely want to see, say, Kinsano's Cyclops definitely needs to be a little tiny bit more beefy, and that's exactly what they're doing. Kinsano is now affected by red line to heated battle. Hell yeah, baby. So those early game pushes that you can do with Kinsano are now going to be much more viable. Kinsano Cyclops kind of sucks right now, especially in the meta. She can just get outplayed by everything. So having a better DPS, say a longer duration, and having Flame Wall actually be effective to push bases, it's going to be really cool to see Hellbringer Kinsano Marine openers. That's something I'm really excited for. If not, then Kinsano Jackrabbits are definitely going to be a good idea, especially with the Jackrabbit tweaks as well. So red line of heated battle to back all those units up is going to be awesome. Moving on to Napalm Missiles. Looks like damage increased 13, 10, and 8% for the 3 different ranges. Napalm DAOT duration has gone from 18, 22, 26 to 22, 25, 30. So what that means is Napalm is the effect that's left behind after the Napalm missile strike hits the ground. You know, there's the original DPS of the missiles hitting, and then after that there's flames on the ground, and that's Napalm. So it looks like they're trying to increase the duration by all of them by, looks like 4 to 3 seconds each time, which is good because it's definitely not... It's an underused leader power because it's not as effective. It has great initial damage, but the napalm isn't always effective. It looks like Kinsano is probably going to be a good idea against infantry plays, which could be cool. Looks like they're also increasing the Inferno duration from 20 to 25 seconds. A lot of you guys who knew the Kinsano release and Jackrabbit Inferno plays, you are now going to have that flamey cringe come back to you. And the Flame Hog DPS and HP increased by 10%, build time reduced by 5 seconds. That's not bad. Damage multiplier versus heavy infantry reduced 17, in cover 13. So once again, they're trying to make vehicles suck against heavy infantry, make heavy infantry only good against vehicles, which is not bad. They're also trying to make the Flamehawk fit into the new Warthog Mantis changes. So these light vehicles are going to be really, really good. I'm really excited to use them. Moving on to Leader Jerome. We have Commander Jerome and his Command Mantis, everyone's favorite leader, despite, you know, the Forge Hog. Jerome's Mantis now uses the medium hero armor type. making it more vulnerable at tier 1. Awesome. That's what I like to see. Jerome's Mantis HP and SP increased by, looks like 15 and 15 each one. I'm pretty sure SP stands for shield percentage, guys. Correct me if I'm wrong down in the comment section below. But once again, those two things, 15% each. If they're trying to make it more vulnerable, then that makes perfect sense. Jerome's upgrade cost has been reduced by 100. So they're trying to make the Mantis a little more viable now that they put the Mantis in a great spot. I'm excited for that. Moving on to the garrisonable unit, the Mastodon. Mastodon HP increased by 23%. Mastodon build time reduced by 5%. They're trying to, or I'm sorry, by 5 seconds. They're trying to make the Mastodon usable. That's perfectly reasonable. These are things that you're going to want to see in the game. Okay, this is going to be incredibly important. These changes, what they do here, I haven't read them yet. Whatever they do here, these are going to be the most important changes because Yap Gap is the most unbalanced leader in the game. If not by, it's not by a lot, but cannon fodder is just ridiculous. So we'll see what they can do. Yap cannon fodder train time has been increased by 2 seconds. I think maybe a 1 second increase would be fine, but 2 seconds is better. That's okay. I like that. Capture decapture speed reduced by 50%. So they're trying to make sure that good players can't completely destroy other players with this free army that they get. Resource crate gather rate reduced by 69%. That's going to change your speed text. So that's going to make it so that your resource capture rate, you're going to need more cannon fodder to grab faster resources. HP per squad member reduced by 13%. So this is going to make cannon fodder much more like cannon fodder, which is great. If you're going to do that, these are good changes without making cannon fodder cost anything. So that's something I completely agree with. Moving on to the Methane Wagon. Methane round impact damage reduced by 20%. If you guys didn't know, Methane Wagons were ridiculous with that little missile. It would chase down super slowly any unit you had, and then it would just drop it. Didn't matter what you had. If you had some leaders in there or hero units in the mix, then they just get dropped. Methane round upgrade damage reduced by 24%. That's awesome. Self-destruct damage reduced by 61%. Really, really effective unit is the Methane Wagon, so it's good to see. Methane debuff from 30% damage taken increase to 25 slow, 20-second damage increase, and 20 slow. So they're trying to make it a little bit less crazy. That's great. Moving on to Methane Party. Bombs deal reduced damage to buildings because you'd see a lot of Methane Party rushes onto bases. So that's, I shouldn't say rush, it's the 12 o'clock leader power. But, you know, that's what you'd see is you'd see complete drops onto bases and everything would die. Methane debuff from 35% damage taken, 30% slow, 20-second and 20 slow, or 20% and 20% slow. So those are, once again, they're trying to match these things to the Methane Wagon. So it looks like all Methane effects are going to be similar. Remove 60% slow upon impact. Awesome. 60% slow? I didn't realize that, man. That's insane. Cost from 400, 400, 700, 700. Much more reasonable. It's way too cheap in its current state. And then cooldown has been increased from 180 seconds to 265. These things are awesome. 400 supply, 400 power for something that's worse than Inferno, in my opinion, is great. That's great. You know, just it was. I'm being sarcastic, but it was just terrible. So moving into 700, 700, reducing its effectiveness. That's exactly what we need to see. Brute Rider is another unit that was way too ridiculous in tier 1. So let's see what they do. Power cost 60 to 75. That's great. Light went over to light armored, so that's okay as well. Making them a little bit more beefy. I'm assuming, yeah, okay. So they're going to reduce the HP by 24%. When they do that from light to light armor, guys, what that means is that their resistance to damage is much higher as an infantry unit. It's called light armored infantry versus just light infantry. So what that means is that, say they take a reduced amount of damage to certain projectile attacks. So HP reduced by 24% is awesome. Damage versus scouts reduced by 50%. Emphasis on ram, I promise you right there, because you could ram a jackrabbit and drop it is insane, and they chase you down. It's really scary to watch, but it's also damn hilarious. Great changes to Brute Rider right there. Moving on to the Heavy Grunts. HP of squad member increased 33%. That's awesome. Squad leader, 30%. That's the guy with the fuel rod. HP of my +1 additional member increased by 40%. DPS of squad member leader increased 30 to 35. DPS of my +1 additional member increased by 125. They're making the HP and DPS of Heavy Grunts better. Nutshell. There you go. That's great. Moving on to Decimus. Decimus viability is improved. Drops 8 beams instead of 2. 8 beams, so it drops down like a mini, essentially like a Hunter's Brand, for example. When Decimus is the unit himself they're talking about here. And he's able to target himself, so if you can't find anybody, you can just target himself, and then he'll start dropping the beams. Decimus special ability cooldown from 30 seconds to 90 seconds. So they're adding 8 beams, they're quadrupling the damage output potential, and then they are also tripling the cooldown. So not bad. Boundless Siphon no longer affects the Warlord. Interesting play there. That makes sense. The double Siphon on an upgrade Warlord was stacking too much and making him difficult to kill. Awesome. Moving on to Vortex Lightning leader power that everyone hates early game. Stun duration has gone from 2 to 2.5 seconds down to 0.5 to 0.8 seconds. So they are nearly having both of those. Actually, what is that? It's a quarter. It's going to be so much easier to deal with. Vortex Lightning is going to be much less annoying, which is awesome. It's definitely going to still do the damage. Oh, my voice cracked. It's definitely still going to do the damage, but it's not going to be as the longevity is not there. That's great. Moving on to Shipmaster, my homie. What do you want to do with the Shipmaster? Elite Honor Guard. Damage to scouts increased by 50%. Hell yeah, baby. Damage to tier 2 vehicles increased by 43%. Hell yeah, baby. Slightly increased splash damage increases effectiveness against infantry squads. Awesome. This is what we need to see. If you have a melee hero unit, it needs to be good in a lot of early game scenarios, and that's what we're seeing. Damage to tier 2 vehicles increased by 43%. This makes the Honor Guard somewhat annoying, which is great. You want the Honor Guard melee units should be in an annoying position. They should not be in an effective position. They should be in an annoying position, even though sometimes annoyance can be effective. You know, say damage to scouts. So what we can do is we can hope that our Honor Guard will survive a Jackrabbit play, and Honor Guard's fast. Honor Guard's really fast, so I'd love to see what he does to save warthogs and rabbits and choppers and ghosts. I'd love to see that now. Especially with splash damage as well. Honor Guards are going to be exciting to use, I hope. I just want the Shipmaster to have a good opening play. If I could run Honor Guard Ghost, I'd do it every game. Moving on to Colony. Looks like Goliath. Ram damage has been increased by 67%. Slightly increased melee splash damage. Increases effectiveness against infantry squads. So they're trying to make Goliath a little bit more viable against those early infantry units. That's great, because Goliath could just get, skirted and rinsed. It's fairly sad, but fairly true. Vehicle Symbiotes, radius increase 50, 42, 33. Awesome. Vehicle Symbiotes needs to be stronger in order to give Colony a little bit of an edge, especially with scout openers, choppers, and skitterers, for example. Damage mitigation has gone from 8 to 10%. So these are okay changes. That's what I want. Honestly, I still consider this a giant buff. This is awesome for Colony. Colony needs this. Skitterer cost has gone from 210 to 150.20. That's awesome. Build time reduced by 3 seconds. So now I'm assuming what will happen with this is while you're trying to do a chopper pump, you will also be able to get skitterers out almost 1-to-1, if not probably like a 2-to-1 ratio. So if you buy a mini base, then you can pump choppers out of your mini, skitterers out of your main, and then you can have, say, like maybe even you might be able to squeeze out their hunter captain, and then you have a really good opening army. I love this kind of, what they're trying to do is make sure that the heroes and their supporting units are all still usable, which is awesome. Arbiter is another one I'm really curious about, especially because of his leader, or hero unit, sorry. Looks like the Arbiter himself, HP and SP increased 14-14, so that's the shield and health. Damage to scouts increased 50%. Hey, just like the Honor Guard. Damage to 2 vehicles, just like the Honor Guard, increased by 43%. Slightly increased splash damage. So what they did is they just made the Arbiter and the Honor Guard a little bit better. I think it's funny they didn't really tweak the Honor Guard's HP as much, did they? I want to go back up to it. No, they didn't. So it looks like the Arbiter was a weaker hero unit. But of course he does have the rage abilities as well, so most certainly need to I want to test that. I love the Arbiter, I love the Shipmaster, so bringing my leaders back in the limelight is going to be really helpful. Conduit of Rage, heal per tick 3% to 4%, which is awesome. Tick rate 2, 1.5, 1, 1, 5, 1.7. So they're trying to make sure that these things are a little bit more balanced. I'm not sure if they meant to do 4 there. Oh, they must have. It's still okay. Whatever. But they're trying to make these the tick rates a little bit better. That's something exciting. This is good. This is good stuff for the Arbiter right here. Stasis telegraphing has gone from 1.5 seconds to 0.5 seconds. So trying to make it a little bit easier to deal with. And then the Phantom, once again, another garrisonable unit, just like the Mastodon. HP has been increased by 20%, build time reduced by 5 seconds. So they did the exact same tweaks to those two, Mastodon and the Phantom. They're trying to make the Phantom a little more viable. So Arbiter, definitely awesome changes for sure. Colony, awesome changes. Who are my favorite out of this whole mix? Yap Gap changes are awesome, making them a little bit more balanced. And also Isabelle. Those are probably my 2 favorites. And of course, Shipmaster is going to be dope with that Honor Guard, bro. moving on to the final thing, I'm just going to kind of skim over the Blitz changes here because I know a lot of us don't necessarily take a lot of care in Blitz, but for those who do, make sure that you do check it out. I'll put the link in the description to this Waypoint article. It's all the way on the final page. Read all the changes because they're changing, I'd say probably around 50% of the cards available in Blitz decks, so give that a look. They're changing prices and things like that, but overall changes I will touch on. Detection affects all units with detection apart from the Watchtower. Range increased by 20%. Reflect, proportion of damage returned to attacker 20%. Siphon, proportion of damage returned as health to Siphon reduced by 25, so trying to make it a little more balanced. Oh, my voice crack. Siphon, proportion of damage returned as health to the Siphon units reduced by 25%. They're trying to make it a little bit more balanced. Energy cores, armor types change to be more resistant to lighter firearms, but more vulnerable to anti-building units. And then bunch of changes to cost. You guys have to check all these out. There are millions. Starting armies have also been adjusted for many leaders, or if not, okay, not all of them, but many leaders. And then, of course, last but not least, we have some generic bug fixes that they work across the game entirely. Temporarily remove the Scarab's Y ability until Awaken the Nightmare update to address a potential exploit issue. I'm not going to tell you guys about that one, but it was an exploit recently found out. I'm not sure if they patched it in the game, but it was ridiculous, to say the least. Digging in, not reducing the cost of bunker drop. Frost Raven hijack was occurring instantly, which is kind of funny to watch. Mantis, Flamehog, and Warthog were incorrectly sharing the same sub-selection. Units could teleport back through a level 1 extraction portal. That's actually, that happened to me a couple times with Shipmaster. What I'd do is I'd extract my units back, and then what I'd do on accident, if you kept your units at your base after they were extracted, they got their health back, and then they'd go back through the teleporter to keep dealing with units. That was either a good thing or a bad thing, depending on the enemy army, but let's just say in one instance I retreated my entire Locust army back, and then they went back through the teleporter and then dropped my enemy's bases. It was insane. I didn't even know it happened. It was ridiculous. The Arbiter's starting grunts were faster than Shipmasters. A lot of people complained about this and made no sense, so it's good to see them. They were just as fast as Enforcers. Shipmaster had some grunts led by brutes among his starting squads in domination. That's funny. Fixed a bug where cannon fodder was giving back too much energy when killed in Blitz. Anders and Johnson trees show up correctly in strongholds. The Brute Rider wasn't getting the benefit of the build time upgrades. Jump pack brutes, grunts, marines, and suicide grunts were getting massive build time reductions from the build time upgrades. Essentially, they were getting each build time reduction 3 times. Oops, we did not mean to do that, did we? And that is that for bug fixes. So there's some awesome things I'd like to see that they're fixing that stuff up. So all these things are great. It's funny that they're still putting so much care into the game this late in its release. I'm really excited to see what they do in Awaken the Nightmare. I bet you we'll see one final bug patch after we have Voridus and Pavium out and available. Those are the 2 new leaders, and I'm excited to see where the future Halo Wars 2 goes. So keep staying tuned to us as we keep uploading videos constantly in Halo Wars 2 as long as possible, as long as the game's alive. This is Slick from Breaking the Clutch, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.